I recently watched a video by the YouTuber Keith Woods entitled Why I Quit My Job. This was posted last year, and it's basically Keith talking about his experience in what sounds like a high-pressure sales environment, call centre environment in Dublin. He talks about examples of his colleagues at the job, one of which basically almost had a mental breakdown through stress from the role, and another, a girl who seemed to be very good at her job, but sadly was only interested in the acquisition of wealth and nothing more. These kinds of roles are some of the purest examples of the neoliberal spirit, if you call that, although I feel uncomfortable calling it a spirit, more so the neoliberal death of humanity. The kind of place that worked in is multiplied throughout not only Ireland but throughout the United Kingdom and the rest of the world. Call centres are not places for humanity. They are counter-human. They absolutely squeeze the human spirit and desire out of anyone who works in them, and the rewards within are limited to the base material, which, of course, being the only thing that neoliberal civilization can provide is base material. But what it got me thinking about is really the fact that we won't see any significant changes in Western civilization until the whole system of neoliberal trade and the mass production of tat ceases to be. Everyone is seemingly medicated, whether or not by chemicals themselves. They're medicated by the drug of consumerism. As Keith says, you can just go online and buy a ukulele and learn to play that, or you can do really anything in terms of purchasing things, so long as you have enough of your meager wages to do it. So why worry about it? Why worry about civilization? We are, quote-unquote, richer than we ever have been before. But of course, none of us really are. There are so many of us now who actually own nothing. We own no land. We own no real property other than what we can carry on our backs. And that is the status that humanity has been led down to, that we are effectively indentured servants. Historically in civilizations, it was the people who owned the land who were the free men and the free women of the land. They were the first people to have things like voting rights and had some kind of real political power, and some say in the system. But now we've seen the turning away of that, and now we see basically the youth of every Western country being used as the lowest form of chattel class, a slave class that is squeezed of all its humanity, with no ability to build for itself any kind of life. Indeed, most importantly, it doesn't have an ability to build a family for itself. In these civilizations, you either have to be extraordinarily rich or extraordinarily poor to afford a family. Middle-class existence and those who actually work for a living are actually some of the poorest people in the society. And in many cases, they can only afford some things because they have actively sought out credit, which has become increasingly available since obviously modern Western civilization is based around the credit system. It's based around the borrowing and the waiting and the future promises, the promissory notes of our fiat currency and banking system. And we also know that this system is seemingly grounding to a halt, or indeed it would, had not the elite continued to attempt to prop it up through various economic measures. But ultimately, I think the collapse of this civilization is inevitable, but it's simply a question of when and whether or not it will happen within our own lifetimes. What COVID-19 has done is that it's really exposed how delicate Western nations are in terms of taking on the kind of challenges which lead to much of the economy shutting down for a few months. In the United Kingdom, there was a high of 9.6 million people furloughed. That is to say that 9.6 million people were having their wages paid for by the state through taxation. And indeed that number remains particularly high as we reach October, when the furlough scheme ends here in the United Kingdom. It's estimated that this could lead to instantly to approximately 2 to 3 million people losing their jobs. These are Great Depression numbers in terms of job losses and unemployment. And we all know what happened after the Great Depression, don't we?